This movie gets so much flack for being terrible. It's not a bad movie. It's decent. It's a decent movie. The Hellraiser series has been in straight to DVD for a very long time now. For this movie, the budget was actually pretty on point. They used it on the gore. Special effects looked great. The acting was pretty bad for the most part. When they needed to act scared, they were scared. When Pinhead was around, they acted how they were supposed to act, and the acting was good. However, the rest of it, when they were trying to emote sorrow or joy or fun, it just wasn't there. There was some sexual tension, which was there, and I love the fact that this movie to bring back the sexuality in the series, because a lot of the Hellraiser movies don't have that. They simply just ignore the sexual side of things, the more BDSM style, and they just basically focus solely on the horror, which it doesn't need to do. The series is rooted in pain and pleasure, and that's where it needs to stay. And this movie got it perfectly. The pseudo Pinhead wasn't bad as well. A lot of people were saying that, oh yeah, everything's terrible, the person who plays Pinhead is awful and stuff like that. But when watching this movie, Pinhead was easily the best thing in this movie. Is he Doug Bradley? No, of course he's not. He's just not. But he's good in the role. He did what he needed to do in the movie. He didn't need to, he didn't need to repeat any of the catchphrases Doug Bradley had. He didn't need to do any of that. He was Pinhead. He was intimidating. He did what he needed to do. He was great. The start of the movie was a bit weird because you have these two teenagers doing a road trip type of thing and drinking, shagging people and stuff like that. And then they disappear, and then it goes to the family, and the family are supposed to be grieving, but with the acting, you couldn't really tell that they're grieving or they were sad. They just seemed very monotone. They all got together. The two boys' parents were there. The little sister was there, and they were basically having dinner. And the daughter was like, "We need to talk about them disappearing. We need some closure. We need to discuss it, and all that." They're very hesitant to do it, but as soon as they start doing it, and during this, the daughter left, and then she comes back, and she's pissed off at them for talking about it, even though it was her idea to talk about it. So I don't quite understand where that came from. It just felt very strange. One of the other things I really, really appreciated in this movie was the fact that as soon as something happened, the father was straight up getting that gun, and he was going to kick some ass. They lock all the doors. They make sure nobody can escape or get in. Great idea. If it wasn't a Hellraiser movie, they probably could have fared quite well against the slasher. But since this is a supernatural kind of movie, they don't really stand a chance, being that as soon as you open the Lament configuration, they're there. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be on a bloody boat and they'll still be there. It doesn't matter. I also like the inclusion of the vagabond. Some of the movies utilise the vagabond, but some don't. I always appreciate when they utilise the vagabond. In one instance, the vagabond was Pinhead, which I didn't really like that. I always like the vagabond and Pinhead being two completely separate people, because it works much better. They don't need to be the same person. Pinhead should only come when he is summoned, as the rest of the Cenobites. They should only come if they're summoned. If they're not summoned, then there's no problem. That's why you need the vagabond, because the vagabond is the person who's always kind of weird, but he's that kind of weird that you need in these movies. He's got this allure about him. Although, like, he's a vagabond and stuff like that, he's dirty, he always has this sense to him. Like, he always knows what's going on. It took me a while to actually get this movie because they didn't actually release it in the UK. It was only in America they released it, and this year it's actually come to the UK. So I'm very grateful for it coming to the UK. I bought Judgment last year, and they didn't even release this one, so I didn't want to watch Judgment before I watched this one, even though they're not connected. They're by completely different people, and they're kind of, well, they're not really reboot-esque, but they're a sequel that doesn't lead off any other sequel. They don't need to. You don't need to have an in. This could be your first movie, and you could just watch it and go, "Oh, okay, I understand." And for the most part, this movie was essentially the first Hellraiser movie. There was a lot of most of it was parallels. You had someone coming back from. He comes back from there, so you have like a Frank kind of story. I also don't get why the guy was topless when he was summoning Pinhead. I get it; it was a reference to what happened in the first Hellraiser. He was topless too, but he didn't really need to be topless for the rest of the scenes that he was in. He wasn't topless. He didn't lose his shirt or anything. He just took his shirt off and then started pissing about with the Lamentka configuration with another bloke. And it's like, okay, fine, but that's a bit weird. Honestly, this is my least favorite Hellraiser. I think this is going to be a bit controversial, but my the worst one for me is still the third one. There's something in that movie that just really, really pisses me off. The first act, I love. I love the first act in Hell on Earth. But as soon as Pinhead gets free, everything is ruined. It's just awful. But this, as I said, this movie is decent. I think it's worth a watch. It's worth a watch. If you like the rest of the Hellraiser series. Even if you don't like the rest of the Hellraiser, why not? What have you got to lose?